So, in this video, I want to address the real reason behind Ukraine's timing of the strikes over the last couple of days. And I also want to address this very weird phenomenon here. Where's Putin? Like, we haven't heard anything from Putin here, and it's just an odd thing. Okay, so you know that the Kerch Bridge was hit. And what we know is that there was a drone down at about 12:17 a.m. and then another at 4:54 a.m. and that was to close the Kerch Bridge. And then the Kerch Bridge, there was an underwater explosion, and it hit at the pylons, like somewhere down here. And then there were subsequent attacks, right? Because you even saw this, like there was an intriguing statement about the first explosive device was activated, and then later on, I was talking about this. Okay, so this is a view of what the first explosion did. And then, uh, oddly enough, last night, Greg Terry and I were talking about this. Like, I wonder how many cards, because we're going back and reviewing that cards, how many, you don't have the cards video. I wonder what cards Zelensky still has up his sleeve. And then we saw the Crimean Bridge thing. And then I saw this, but this was the last thing that I saw. Crimean Bridge has been attacked again. This is a second attack in a day. It seems that underwater drones were used. Well, it looked like an underwater drone was on its way. And when I'm looking at this, I talked about the Kerch Bridge under second wave attack right now. And that's what we had at the very moment when I put this up. It looked like there was something else going on. But there was a Russian Zala Lancet loitering munition system that struck the Ukrainian naval drone that was reportedly involved in the attacks on Crimea. And that's it. And that's as far as it went, right? Now, you can speculate, like there was this video image of fire on the Kerch. And I think what we're seeing here is that this is some kind of Russian air defense. And I even said that in that video. I think, that could very well be air defense. I'm not seeing enough to say like there's more to it. But that seems to be it for that. Then you have some commentary and speculation. Oleg Koster, who I've commented on a number of times, said, I wonder if the Kerch Bridge explosives, which were planted, were meant to weaken pillars for an eventual tourist strike at the same location to fully take out part of the bridge. We just don't know. And if we say we know, we don't know. Like, let's just be honest. We don't know. I'm just trying to show you what's out there. Okay. Meanwhile, Che Baus thinks he knows, and he said Ukraine tried to destroy the Crimean Bridge using an underwater drone. No explosives were planted. Well, that's factually incorrect. Apparently, explosives were planted. Russian countermeasures, white circular, built to thwart this kind of attack, worked perfectly. I don't think it worked perfectly because there was a big underwater explosion. The bridge did not even close for traffic. Well, that's just Philistine pig ignorance. Here's what actually happened. Here's a CNN article talking about the bridge closing. So let's go back and look at this. Here it is. The SBU said on Telegram that its agents had mined the piers of the road and rail Crimean Bridge, also called the Kerch Bridge, and detonated the first explosive at 4:44 a.m. Tuesday. The whole operation took several months, it added. The agency said it had used 1,100 kilograms of explosives, which severely damaged the underwater pillars supporting the bridge. Traffic on the bridge was suspended early Tuesday morning and then again mid-afternoon before resuming shortly before 6 p.m. local time. Like, who's lining up to get on this bridge after that's happening? I don't know. But you can also see this in other news articles. You'll see the BBC and others that are talking about this. Here's actual footage from the Crimean Bridge. Obviously, this is not actual footage. It's just a meme that somebody made up. That's a general that was behind this. And okay, so that's where we are with the bridge. So I wanted to bring you up to speed from where my last video was, where it looked like, whoa, something else is coming, to it looks like that was it. But that's pretty amazing. Now, why today? That's the big story. And before we, we're not going to really figure out why today for the Kerch, but we can figure out the why today for the other big story. So the destruction of at least 11 Russian strategic bombers visible, 7 Tu-95s and 4 Tu-22 M3s and 1 AN-12 cargo plane, which does not belong to strategic aviation. Here, this is Radio Free Europe showing like, yeah, you can kind of see it from space, from satellite kind of imaging. Yeah, it happened, right? But why did this happen just a day or so ago? Well, 2 days ago. Okay. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. Ukraine is taking the fight against Putin's brutal invasion into the heart of Russia, degrading strategic air forces that threaten America's national security. This is Mike Pence, former vice president. And they really were. Like, these same kind of planes were like menacing off the coast of Alaska. For our security and security of the free world, America must continue to stand with Ukraine until the Russian invasion is repelled and a just and lasting peace is achieved. Okay, it's a great comment. Now, let's look a little bit further. News that two A-50s were destroyed in Ukraine's June 1st operation is very big. They only had two or three of them. Russia now has none or close to no functional AWACS. Comparison, the United States has 32, China has about 30, NATO total has only 14, Japan has 17, India has 5, Pakistan 9, South Korea 4, Australia 6, Israel 7, and the list goes on. Like, they don't have AWACS. AWACS are these planes that go up in the air and kind of can radar for all the traffic that's going around and can kind of help coordinate that, right? And see everything from the air. It's very important. Anna from Ukraine is helping us understand just what this was like.
You had no cards, they said. Well, we don't play cards. Instead, we think, we innovate, and we destroy 1/3 of the Russian aviation, strategic aviation, in just one day.
She's pretty happy about that. And I understand why she'd be pretty happy about it. And that's pretty amazing that 1/3 of the Russian strategic bomber fleet is destroyed in one day. Now, why was it destroyed on that particular day? We'll get to that very soon. Before that, let's look at this, because this sets up why. Remember the disgusting smirks of the Russian delegation at the previous negotiations? Well, this time, for some reason, they looked a bit sad. They did not look nearly as smug as they did the previous time. Why? Well, here's the answer to what I've been trying to get to. Russia planned Operation Zeus Lightning, largest ever cruise missile attack on all of Ukraine for the night of June 1st. Oh, so the the Ukrainians, by attacking when they did, snuffed out this largest potential attack. Like, we knew, we could tell from satellites. I mean, like, Greg and I were even talking about this the day before this. Like, we knew that the Tupolev, whatever numbers they are, plane strategic bombers were loading these kind of things on, like, at the time, and getting ready. They were pulling them together to attack Ukraine. Looks like the day before whatever was going to happen in Istanbul. And then the Ukrainians beat them to the punch. Yeah, with Operation Zeus Lightning. Ukrainian drones destroyed many of these very bombers, already fueled hours before they were to take off. Experts note that such logistical aviation activity has not been observed since 2021. Western analysts agree that Russia is accumulating strike potential to launch a coordinated attack on key Ukrainian infrastructure facilities, energy transport hubs, and decision-making centers. Yeah, so it looked like they were just about to do that, and then the Ukrainians pulled the trigger on that. Now, the Ukrainians could have done the same kind of thing to the Victory Day parade, but they got a much bigger bang for the buck for doing it then. And this also happened to be the anniversary of when Ukraine finally gave away all of those strategic bombers to the Russians as part of the deal where they gave away their nukes back in the Clinton administration. So yeah, so the Budapest Memorandum, the very closure of that, where they finally gave that away. Okay, now, where does that leave us today? So just one day after the latest round of direct Russia-Ukraine peace talks ended with a breakthrough, without a breakthrough, the top Ukrainian officials arrived in Washington, and they were there talking to Keith Kellogg. Andrei Yermak and his team met with Keith Kellogg in Washington. They discussed the situation on the front line, the outcomes of the meeting in Istanbul, the importance of strengthening sanctions against Russia, and military aid to Ukraine. They also addressed the issue of children abducted by Russia. Like, this should have been thing number one. Like, why are we even talking about peace unless you give the children back, right? Like, the moral outrage just isn't there, and it ought to be. We've handed over lists to the Russian side, and we are awaiting a response. It's crucial to bring them home, said the head of the presidential office. Okay, Russian negotiators admitted to abducting, quote, several hundred, unquote, Ukrainian children during recent peace talks in Istanbul. According to President Zelensky, they also called illegal deportations, or talking about illegal deportations, just a show for childless European grandmothers. Like that's kind of cold. Like that's what this is about. Like if your kid was lost, you'd be going nuts, pulling out your hair trying to find where that kid was, let alone being abducted to a foreign country that's trying to kill you. Kremlin refutes Kyiv's charges that there are about 20,000 Ukrainian children that have been basically kidnapped and deported across the border, saying the figure is instead in the hundreds at most. Even then, in the hundreds at most, if there are hundreds of kidnapped children, like, one would be enough for the FBI to be all out trying to figure out where the kid is in the United States. Like, this is terrible. This is tragic. Okay. Meanwhile, Medvedev is, well, doing what he does. Russian Security Council Deputy Chairman Medvedev statement. Anyone hoping for peace through negotiations must reread this. Here's his statement. To all who are worried and waiting for retribution, you need to worry. This is a normal person's quality. Retribution isn't inevitable. In this case, you should remember 1. Our army is actively advancing and will continue to advance. Everything that is supposed to explode will certainly explode, and those who are supposed to be exterminated will disappear. Well, that's his stance, right? Number 2, the negotiations in Istanbul are needed not for a compromise peace on unrealistic conditions invented by someone, but for our speedy victory and the complete destruction of the neo-Nazi government. This is the meeting of the Russian memorandum, which was published yesterday. Okay, so he's not trying to win friends and influence people. He's always doing the saber rattling, the crazy talk, but where's Putin in all this? Like, I haven't heard a peep out of Putin yet, and I just don't know what's happened. This is a Where's Waldo theme for my thumbnail. He just, like, where'd he go? Okay. Now, couple that with, where's Trump? So Trump, he's not bashful, and he usually inserts himself into everything, and he hasn't said anything. I mean, I went through all of his recent Truth Social posts, and he's not said anything about this. Now, I did watch today as his press secretary was asked a question about Ukraine, and she answered with like one word and moved on. Like, no, next question. And and then I also watched Keith Kellogg. He was on Fox News trying to answer the questions that he was presented. And he was basically saying, well, this isn't good because it's raising the temperature and leading us closer to nuclear, as the three-part legs of the Russian nuclear deterrence is being injured. It's leading us closer to nuclear war, and we don't want the temperature to rise. That's precisely the wrong direction. You don't want nuclear war, but you want to push Putin to his back foot rather than let them feel like they're comfortable. Okay, meanwhile, this was really encouraging news. The U.S. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, backs toughest possible sanctions on Russia, telling the New York Post, many in Congress want sanctions against Russia as strongly as we can. And I'm an advocate of that. Okay, he was the weak link. So you had 82 on board in the U.S. Senate. That's you need like 67 to be veto to overcome a potential presidential veto. And I said, you probably have a supermajority over in the House as well. But the question is, will the Speaker lay it on the table? And if he does, then you probably have that. And I think Trump will let him do the dirty work of putting this forward. And even if Trump doesn't sign it, they can override Trump and that'll move on. So I think that's what's going to happen from here. Representative Brian Fitzpatrick, who's been very outspoken for Ukraine from Pennsylvania, says, thank you, Speaker Johnson, for your support. Now is the time for Congress to act decisively. We must pass my bipartisan Sanctioning Russia Act with Lindsey Graham, South Carolina, to hold Putin's regime accountable for refusing to pursue peace, violating Ukraine's sovereignty, continuing to attack innocent civilians with impunity, which is exactly what he's been doing. Okay, I stumbled over this as I was just doing some research. I posted this about a year ago. Senator Graham just said Ukraine will get ATACMS, which they did, and they will take out the Kerch Bridge. He's making the case for Ukraine, and he was. This was about the time where the aid bill, both for Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan, was on the table. And look at the date, April 23rd, 2024. Takes a little while, but it looks like some more momentum is coming. Okay, Ukraine plans to produce 2.5 million drones in 2025. That's 2.5 times more than in 2024, when 1 million was a stretch. But they're going to do it, and yeah, and they're not the only ones doing it. The Brits are now going to spend an additional 2 billion, about 2.7 billion US dollars, on the development of manned technology. 2 billion pounds is about 2.7 billion US, focused on the experience of the Russian-Ukrainian war. Yeah, you better be taking these lessons. If you're in the U.S. Army and you're listening to me, please be paying attention to this. Okay. Former Lithuanian Prime Minister Landsbergis gets the math right. He said, quote, "I would like my country to have security guarantees from Ukraine." Yeah. So when I hear some people say Ukraine cannot join NATO because we are not ready to provide it with security guarantees, I think, I'd like my country to have security guarantees from Ukraine. If we're already worried about a Russian attack, I would be much calmer knowing that the Ukrainians will fight side by side with us. Yeah, there's something to that. Okay, as we wrap up, just a meme or two. We just took out a third of Russia's nuclear capable bomber fleet in one day. Did you even say thank you? Julia Davis made that argument the other day, but it looks better in this meme. And then finally, last little bit from Darth Putin, day 1,195 of my 3-day war. Russian truck drivers drove Ukraine's drones to the air bases, and Russian security cameras filmed their attack on the bridge for them. I remain a master strategist. Yeah, that's where we are. But the big question is, where's Putin? What's going on? Why is he so quiet? All right, my friends, that's all that I have for today. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.